Let me ask you something. Have you been handed a project, no clear sponsor, no approved budget, no decision authority, and have been told to just make it happen? And instead of pushing back, you said, yes. You built the plan, you ran the meetings, you chased the stakeholders, you sent the status reports. And when it fell apart, because it was always going to fall apart, your name was on it. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because what happened to you wasn't a project management failure, it was a governance failure, and you paid the price for it. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly why that keeps happening in detail and what you need to do differently starting with your next project. Here's what nobody tells you when you step into a senior PM role. The organization will give you responsibility all day long. Responsibility for delivery, responsibility for timelines, responsibility for team performance, responsibility for stakeholder satisfaction. What they don't automatically give you, though, is authority. Authority to make decisions, authority to enforce scope, authority to escalate without political blowback, authority to say, this project ain't ready to execute. And here's where it gets dangerous, especially for you. When you accept responsibility without authority, you become the shock absorber for every organizational problem that leadership hasn't bothered to resolve. Think about it. Unclear sponsorship. The PM will figure it out. No budget approval. The PM will work. Stakeholders who won't commit. The PM will chase them down. Scope that keeps shifting. The PM will absorb the chaos. You're not being trusted. You are being used as a buffer between leadership and accountability. And the longer you normalize it, the more it becomes the standard they hold you to. Now, getting on to the main portion of what I wanted to discuss, because I've spent over 2 decades watching this play out. First in the military, then in healthcare, IT, aerospace, and now in fin services. The environment changes, the technology changes, acronyms change, but the pattern never changes. Projects get launched without real sponsorships. PMs get handed scope that was never truly defined. And when delivery gets messy, the organization looks for the closest accountable person, i.e., the scapegoat. 9 times out of 10, that's the project manager. Just saying. I'm not here to tell you the system is fair. It isn't. I'm here to tell you that you can't operate inside that system without being consumed by it. If you understand exactly what you own, what you don't own, and how to enforce the right decisions before you're too deep to get out of. But this comes with a framework, right? I call this the PM authority gap, and it has 3 parts. The first part, responsibility without authority, is a setup. When a project has no confirmed sponsor, no approved funding, no defined scope, and no clear decision rights, it's not a project yet. It is an idea with a deadline and a PM attached to it. The moment you accept that ownership of that work without pushing for those fundamental answers, you have accepted accountability for all outcomes you do not control. And that is the setup. Now, part 2. The PM's job is to expose gaps, not absorb them. Let me be very clear about what I just stated. A project manager owns the plan, you own the process, you own communication discipline, you own risk visibility, you own escalation. You do not own the business reason for the project. You do not own the funding decisions. You do not own scope trade offs, and you do not own political authority or even commitment. Your job, and I'm going to say this again, your job is to make those gaps visible, clearly, professionally, and without apology. Not to quietly absorb the gap and hope it resolves itself. It's just as simple as that. Because if you absorb it, the organization never learns that the gaps existed. They just see the PM handled it, and they will hand you the same broken situation on the next project. Think about that. Now, let's go to the third part. Professional aggression is a skill, not a personality trait. I'm not telling you to be difficult. I am not telling you to be combative. I'm telling you that calm, clear, documented pressure is a professional skill. And most PMs never develop it because they were trained to be coordinators, not leaders. Here's what professional aggression looks like in practice. You ask directly. You document what you hear. You assign owners to open decisions. You escalate when decisions stall. You state consequences clearly, not as threats, but as facts. For example, without a confirmed sponsor, I cannot baseline scope or timeline. This is now a risk to the project. I'm documenting it in the raid log and flagging it to leadership. I recommend we pause execution planning until governance is confirmed. See, that's not difficult behavior. That's disciplined project leadership. It's just as simple as that. So, to give you an example of some of my experiences early on in my project management career, I was handed an IT infrastructure project in healthcare environment. No charter, verbal sponsors, budget that has been approved in principle, which means that was just discussed in passing or in, some kind of meeting that never was written down or formalized. And I took it. I built the plan. I ran the kickoff. I started coordinating execution. And within 6 weeks, we hit a major decision point. We needed a technical architectural call that required budget authority. The sponsor, he wasn't available. The budget was actually not approved. The scope had expanded beyond what anybody would consider defined. And suddenly I was in the steering committee explaining why this project was behind. Here's the thing. The project wasn't behind because I failed to manage it. The project was behind because it was never properly formed. But I had accepted responsibility without pushing for the structure that would have protected both the project and my own professional credibility. That was the last time I made that mistake. From that point on, I baselined any project, and I mean any and all projects. And I asked 6 questions, and if I don't get answers to those questions, I did not move forward with execution. Here's the questions. Who authorized this work? Who owns the business outcome? What is the scope and explicitly out of scope? Who is the decision authority? What's the funding boundary? What does success actually mean? If those answers don't exist, I document that. And then I escalate every time. Now, if you're watching this and thinking this is exactly the situation I'm in right now, I want to give you something practical. I put together a project starter pack, a formation standard that walks through the exact documents, questions, ownership boundaries, and escalation language that I use to structure projects before execution begins. It covers the business case, the charter scope, stakeholder mapping, governance, RAID, communication, and the readiness gate I use to decide whether a project is actually ready to execute. It's free. The link's in the description below. If you're a project manager, delivery lead, or operations leader dealing with governance gaps, missing sponsors, scope that keeps moving, etc., as I explained before, then start there. Here's the thing that I want you to carry out of this video. Project management is a discipline, not a service function. Your job is not to make chaos more manageable for an organization that refuses to make decisions. Your job is to make reality visible and to hold the standard for what a project needs before it can be delivered with integrity. You can absorb the chaos. Any experienced PM can. But absorbing chaos silently is not leadership. It is compliance. The best project managers I have ever worked with in uniform and out of it were not ones who found ways to execute despite impossible conditions. They were the ones who looked at impossible conditions and said, this is not ready. Here's what needs to happen before it is. That's the standard. If this landed with you, subscribe, because this is what we're building here. In the next video, we're going to talk about what it actually looks like when a project is set up correctly from day one, and why most organizations confuse urgency with readiness. I'll see you there.